And we're live. What's going on, everyone? It's Talks with Kenny here today, and we'll be not debating, but I'll be kind of reacting to the cultural war for Tim Pool. I hope everyone had a great week. I had a somewhat fine week. I'm pretty tired, though. I ain't gonna lie to you guys. I've been tired the entire week. But hey, I gotta keep on pushing, right? So this is gonna be a video about masculinity, and I kind of want to define masculinity before I get into it. But as we know, I'm using the Harvard Business Review. This article is about rooting out masculine defaults in your workplace. And I want to kind of hold myself to these like list of requirements, which is stereotypically masculine roles, stereotypically feminine roles. So they have self-reliance, assertive, competitive, decisive, right? While stereotypically female traits, feminine traits are nurturing, agreeable, collaborative, adjusting, modest, holistic. I don't know what that means, but whatever. And some of the talks I want to kind of get into is that in our society today, it seems like they want to demonize men from embodying these masculine traits, but uplift women that are embodying these masculine traits, right? If a woman was self-reliant, assertive, competitive, influence, if a woman was being decisive, a leader, being bold, these traits will be shouted from the mountaintops. Oh my God, this is the greatest thing ever since sliced bread. Hi, Jonathan Fields. Hope you're having a good week and hope you'll have a better weekend, right? These traits will be so beloved by women, by all of society, because that's what society is starting to praise nowadays. But if a man comes out being self-reliant, assertive, competitive, people will say, "Oh, he's trying to bring back the patriarchy." And I think the masculinity debate is not necessarily is masculinity bad. The masculinity debate is necessarily is should men be allowed to have these traits in the first place? And I think this is an attempt at our culture to socially engineer men to be less masculine, right? And I kind of want to go into this article just a little bit. I think this one thing I want to like give an example, right, about how society is trying to, in a way, socially engineer masculinity out of the workplace, right? So fighting, like for instance, I'm gonna go with this point and then I'm gonna go into the Tim Pool video. Fighting masculine defaults with the masculinity defaults. Right. Some gender equity initiatives, which is I don't like that word, but hey, who cares? Can actually exacerbate masculine defaults. In 2014, Google required self-nomination process for promotion caused women to get promoted at a lower rate than men, right? Because they're trying to make this idea that, oh, we should remove the idea that women have to take on masculine traits to be successful in the workplace, which I agree. I don't really agree, because if an action works, right? If being competitive gives you an advantage, why not be competitive, right? Because apparently, and this is true to nature, for women to display these masculine traits, right, it's a lot more exhaustive for them, right? And here's a head at engineering thought. He solved this problem by sending emails to remind women to nominate themselves. This strategy causes more women to self-nominate, but sending these emails reinforce that the stereotypical masculine values of promoting oneself and asks women to conform to it, right? And so there's this idea with masculinity in general that even feminists or these gender equality initiatives or people who push gender equality, they're starting to see a little negative effect that women, because in the day, the most unhappiest woman in the world is a single, highly successful, older woman, right? A woman that displays the stereotypical masculine traits is one of the most unhappiest women in the world. So now these gender conformists are trying to say, okay, let's try to, I guess, feminized culture. And I think we do live in a very feminized culture that's trying to masculate us to be more collaborative. And this is why, and there's a study out here, I forgot what it was, like you put 100 men and 100 women and you put them in a deserted island, and the women tend to be more like communist, socialist about how they want to divvy up resources. They try to do things by committee while men do things by hierarchy. And that's blatantly in your face in reality, in nature, right? that we're predisposed to exhibit these traits. And I think that's the real conversation about masculinity. And I think as we go into this video, and sorry, I'm rambling a little bit, but I kind of want to set the stage about how exactly I want to kind of give my thoughts about this video, this debate with Destiny, John Doyle, and Lauren Chan, is that you'll see that there's this resistance to admit that there's some things that's just natural between men and women, right? And I'm speaking as a father, right? A father of 2 young boys, right? I have a 2-year-old and I have today, it makes him 3 weeks old now. And some things is just natural. Like my son is fearless, very assertive, right? To a fault sometimes. Sometimes I have to tell him, hey, reel it back, son, reel it back, right? Fearless. Like my son is not scared to try anything. And that's something you'll say, oh, that's a masculine trait. But these gender neutral, oh, raise your kids gender neutral, they won't understand this, right? And that's one thing I have a problem with. People who don't have kids are trying to sit here and tell me how to raise mine. That's one thing I have a big problem with it. And usually it's liberals. But hey, I digress. So let's get into what you actually guys came here for. And let's watch this cultural debate. And as usual, I'll give my thoughts throughout the entire video. And let's dive in.
Men. They're floundering at school, in the workplace. Some conservatives blame a crisis of masculinity, but the problems and their solutions are far more complex. Yeah, so this is the big issue, I suppose, men's failure to launch. We hear about toxic masculinity quite a bit in, various corporate press circles, things like that. We've had the Gillette commercial and other things like that seem to poke at, a view of toxic masculinity. But I'm curious, just to kick it off, whoever wants to start, what's your thought on why men appear to be failing?
I assume So my thoughts about that question, why men appear to be failing. Well, they're going to talk about this in the show, obviously in the podcast. And I'm only going to do like 30 minutes of this video because it's a 2-hour stream on Tim Pool's part. But if you want to watch the full video, as always, link in the description below once I'm done with the stream. But this idea that masculinity and toxic masculinity is that framing in of itself is why I think it's the problem. And I kind of alluded to in my opening monologue is that we're trying to demonize masculine traits in men, but praise masculine traits in women. And the more feminine a man acts, the more accepted, the more pushed in society he is. And I think this is what's leading a lot of men to kind of be turned off by our culture, right? There's stats out there that like a majority of men are not even interested in becoming fathers, which is, I think, is one of the most masculine things you can be, is because as a father, you're seen as, traditionally anyway, I'm a traditional man. Traditional household. I have a traditional household here. You're seen as the leader, the one that when ish hit the fan, you're supposed to lead us out of the way, right? The mom is supposed to be the support system. She's supposed to be the CO, right? The chief operating officer, right? Operations officer. She makes sure the family is a well-oiled machine, and the father is supposed to provide, instill values, set the standards for the household, right? What the values of the household will be is usually dictated by the father, especially an active one. And I think that's a big thing that's missing in our society today, is because a lot of our educational institutions are female dominated. And there's stats out there that shows that like girls in school, public, high school, middle school, they get better grades than boys. But when it comes to testing, boys outperform the girls, right? If you're thinking, hey, if girls get better grades in the classroom, in the day-to-day activities of the classroom, you expect them to have better test scores when there's time to take a standardized test. But no, boys perform better on standardized tests than girls. And some of the theories I have around this is that a lot of female dominated space, and me growing up in the education system, I noticed this too. Female teachers tend to give better, or they seem to be more, I want to say biased, but they seem to be more considerate or more encouraging and more supportive of their female students doing well in class, right? They'll be like, oh my God, Susie, you wrote the best paper ever, right? They're more likely to reaffirm women, push women, right? But they don't do that much with the boys. And I think this is what's catering into why boys are falling behind in education and all this stuff, is because boys don't feel accepted in these environments, right? Even when I went to college, I had this felt like college felt hostile to me, because like I just enrolled in university, and then I'm already hit with, oh, you got to learn sexual harassment, this, that, and the third. And I was like, what? Like, it's automatically assumed that you're the bad guy here. And this is what happens in a lot of female dominated space, which is the education system. I think we have too many female teachers, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, but I just think female teachers need to recognize that boys don't respond the same way as girls, right? You know, boys are more likely to be called like getting in trouble, more likely to get disciplined, because at the end of the day, we don't like, boys don't stand still. Like, my son is a prime example of that. They don't listen. They don't like to stand still. Like, my wife is dealing with that right now with my 2-year-old. Like, he doesn't want to sit still. He doesn't want to listen to her. I have to come in and be commando on him, like disciplinary on him, and he'll listen. And female teachers don't like that. They feel like it's a chore to deal with boys. And I think this is why boys get like lesser grades during the day-to-day activities of school. Why female teachers tend to be more hostile to boys, because if you do anything traditionally masculine as a boy, you'll get condemned, and almost is creating an incentive structure where you're punishing men for being men. And I think this is very prominent in female dominated spaces. And I think if we want masculinity to come back, right, the traditional masculinity to come back, I think female teachers need to know how to actually teach boys without having the boys deny who they are by nature, right? And that's kind of the point I wanted to make. But hey, I don't want to talk too long. Let's get back into the video.
We're going in order of who was introduced first, but all right, I'll be like the based alpha male and assert myself into the conversation early on, I suppose. I think it's probably because we just aren't taught how to be men. I mean, traditionally, men would be taught how to sort of grow into their masculinity by their fathers, grandfathers, uncles, but now we have a very, I think, androgynous and weak society because of things like you mentioned with testosterone going down because of different lifestyle factors, things they're putting in the food, things even in the water. There's like residual birth control, I think, like estrogen in the water. But also I think our society doesn't really incentivize positive channeling of those behaviors. You know, typically if you are a man, you're going to want to like impose your will upon the world in some capacity, whatever that may be. But if you can't do that, you're going to turn that inward and self-destruct, or you're going to try to distract yourself from that drive naturally with things like maybe drugs, video games, masturbation, pornography. And so I think that's kind of what we're seeing, just because men haven't really been taught by their fathers, who they're largely absent from their lives in the first place now, how to actually be a man. And now people don't even know what that means. Like, if you ask someone how to be a man, and even you look in like in the red pill community, they'll say, well, being a man is like, you know, having sex with lots of women and smoking cigars and drinking whiskey. And it's like this caricature. It's like a costume of like what masculinity actually is. And so no,
I agree with that kind of wrap up. And obviously I'm conservative, so my thinking leans towards what John Doyle is presenting here, right? You could say it's a chemical attack. You could say it's an ideological attack. You could say it's a cultural attack on masculinity, right? And even what he was talking about with the red pill stuff, and I think that's one of the biggest critiques or biggest disagreements I have with the red pill space, is that they make masculinity about like arbitrary things. Like, you got to sleep with 15 women to be considered a real man. And I think those things are very arbitrary. Just like arbitrary is like, you have to be 30 years old before you should be allowed to get married. And I'm like, well, there's 30-year-olds that are so immature, they don't qualify for a relationship no matter how old you make them, right? Because life experience makes you ready for marriage and all that stuff. Necessarily just because you get married young, right? I got married young. I'm like, what? I got married at 25 years old. Yeah, 25 years old going into 26. I'm pretty mature for my age, right? Because end of the day, your character, your values dictate if you're ready for a relationship or not your age, right? And so I have a hard time when people try to make something arbitrary, like, oh, you have to be this to be considered a real man, right? And I think a lot of the designation of manhood and womanhood, it shouldn't be designated necessarily about what you do, but about what the values and the things, because end of the day, masculinity and femininity are just attributes, right? There's feminine men who are, you know, what I listed out earlier in the video, who are like collaborative, agreeable, right? Humble. Those are feminine traits, right? And they people like this is where I have a problem with a lot of this, like, oh, you gotta be this specific thing or you're not this, right? And it's the same thing you see with identity politics, right? Oh, I don't know a black person that votes Republican, so they're trying to insinuate that you ain't black if you vote Republican, right? Like things like that, those arbitrary things, like, oh, action justifies who you are, is, to me, it's very reductive in my view, right? But hey, I digress.
one really has a clear definition of it, because I don't think the definition is actually that interesting. Like if you'd go back 100 years and be like, how do I be a man? It's like, I don't know, just like do it. It's supposed to be something that happens naturally. And I think that as our society has devolved.
And I kind of want to add to his point as well, is that a lot of people are not around. And that's why I was trying to make the point with the teachers thing. There's not a lot of male teachers in school anymore. So there's not opportunities for men to model positive male behavior, right? So what we what we do is now we look up to these red pill guys, and then we start modeling their behavior, right? Andrew Tate. This is why Andrew Tate is so popular with young men, because he's giving them some like a template for them to model after. And this is how kids learn. Like, I don't understand why people say, oh, why you have to look up at Andrew Tate? Why can't it be a woman? No, men like to model other men, right? Men wants that camaraderie, that brotherhood, right? And this is why Andrew Tate is so popular, because he gives something like, oh, men to aspire to be. Oh, I want to be kickboxer. Oh, he's smart. I want to do that. Oh, he makes a lot of money. I want to do that too, right? He has like very marketable things that's valued in our society. We live in a very materialistic society. So him having a lot of money, it helps his message, and people say, okay, I want to be closer to what this guy got. This guy got something that I want. I don't have. How do I get that? And he's giving you the message. Okay, you got to be this. Okay, I'm gonna follow that, because he has credibility, because he has something that everyone in society kind of values, and that's monetary value. Sorry, that's the truth, right? If a millionaire sit here and told you something, you'll pay attention more than some guy on YouTube. You don't know what he does for a living, and he makes what, $50K a year. You're gonna take his advice less on masculinity than a millionaire, and that's just how our society has been constructed now. And this is why women will value their career over their family, because culturally, educationally, we've been kind of how you say this? We've been kind of conditioned to value materialistic gain, right? And everything kind of is a byproduct of that. Okay, we F around family. We don't care about family. I got to make sure I have my career first. I got to graduate, get my career, then look for marriage and a spouse and success and all that stuff. Where, depending on your gender, it's harder for you to find a spouse when you get older in age, because as you get older, and that's something I noticed too, your ability to find social circles becomes harder, right? Because in school, it's easy. I just show up to school, a lot of people, and eventually I can create social circles. But when now I'm in my career, and now with all this sexual harassment stuff, it's dangerous for men to have relationships in the workplace now. Women are finding it harder and harder to date, and this is why these social media, these dating apps are blowing up. And women can't find valuable connections. But I feel like I've been rambling too long. I think I need to get back into this video.
We've had so many impediments introduced that prevent people from doing that naturally. They think they have to like reinvent it into some really complex thing. You have to take these courses and read these books. And that's not the case. You should really be able to just kind of develop into it, I think.
I wonder if it had something to do in the past with survival, in that men fought wars, put out fires, were hunting and things like that. And as we've advanced as a civilization in terms of technology, survivability has become less and less of an issue for us. We have too much food now. And so is there really going to be this manly man who's super ripped with a big beard chopping down trees? Or is it going to be some beer belly guy driving around in a heavy machinery who just presses a button and has it done for him? So, we have this traditional view of masculinity with these heroic images of men that we don't need as much anymore.
Yeah, I think that's definitely possible. I think that it's still possible, though, for men to be heroes, even in this like post-industrial society. But I think they're prevented from doing so. I mean, even like in school nowadays, boys can't stand up for themselves on the playground because they have like zero tolerance policies, which teach kids that like violence is absolutely never something that's permitted. So if some kid's picking on you and you fight back, you are now going to be suspended as well. You also have things like they bring in these social workers and counselors to try to tell boys that like if you have a problem, you have to talk about it, and there's probably something wrong with you.
So this is like, I don't know, because I know John Doyle is like 23 years old and I'm 27, so I'm 4 years older than him. And I remember growing up, I had to, like, when people pick on me, I had to stand up for myself, right? Especially in the hood, talking how I talk got me picked on a lot. So I had to get used to standing up for myself a lot. And that taught me a valuable lesson, that like self-agency, No one's going to come and save you. And that's a masculine trait, self-reliance, right? Hey, if I don't solve my own problems, who will, right? And this is the idea that bullying, in a way, and this is how I say you can turn adversity into something positive, is because the adversity is supposed to teach you something. You're supposed to take a lesson out of it. You have to derive some type of meaning and purpose from your struggles. And I think that helps you not fall into nihilism and hopelessness. Is because you see a lot of people that when they go through tough times in life, they just give up. They're like, oh, what's the point, right? It's hard to succeed in life. It's hard to do this, that, and the third. And of course it is. Like, anything worth having is not going to be easily attained, right? And you have to understand that you have to work hard to get what you want. So when, these hood guys, the stereotypical black guy come here, try to make fun of me. Oh, you talk white, you're this, you're that, lame, nerd. All right. But they knew not to mess with me because they know, oh, Kenny will fight you. And Kenny, and I'm not a small guy either. I'm like 6'1". I'm 6'1.5", and I'm fairly athletic, I'll say, because I used to play basketball in high school. So people knew, okay, like, even if I do beat up Kenny, I'm gonna pay a price, right? And that's the whole point of bullying is supposed to teach them, man. Like, hey, if someone's gonna pick on me, make sure they pay a price for picking on me. Like, make sure they don't get away scot-free, because in the world of men, and I don't know how it is for women, but I'm just speaking from personal experience growing up in the hood and all this stuff. If you get picked on and you don't fight back, you incentivize more people to pick on you. And that's one thing I learned when I was like 6 or 7 years old, right? When I didn't do anything, right? I played the typical feminine, oh, I'm going to go tell the teachers. Okay, they'll wait until the teachers are not around, or they'll pick on me after school, right? And this is the problem I have with our feminized culture and the way that we handle things nowadays, right? Is because we don't teach the kids the skills to actually be able to stand up for themselves, right? Because if you don't know how to stand up for yourself, what happens when you become an adult? Your parents, you can't go to run to your parents and tell them, oh, hey mom, my boss don't want to give me a raise. What could you talk to my boss for me? No, your boss gonna be like, hey, who the hell are you? I don't know who you are. Click, right? You have to speak on your own behalf to get what you want. But no, this is what happens when now we're trying to remove masculinity out of society. Oh, masculinity, there's no need for it anymore. There's no need for you to promote yourself anymore. There's no need for you to speak on your own behalf. Let people speak for you. And this is what I can't stand with liberals when they come up here and say, oh, we're standing up for black people. No, let black people stand up for themselves, because what you're doing is you're just virtue signaling. You're using the fact that black people are having a hard time in a hard situation, and you just want to make yourself look good. Right. And this is how we fall into this culture of, self-righteousness and, oh, I'm going to use this as a political weapon to hit the other guy because, oh, you're racist, you're this, calling each other names. And I'm kind of tired of it, honestly. But, hey, I think I went on a little tangent there, but let's get back into the video.
They even try to turn the students like against their parents in some cases. If kids are like, my mom destroyed my Lego set because she was mad at me. A whole Lego set destroyed? That was something I remember happening to one of my buddies when I was in elementary school. So I think it's like taking children and basically teaching them to be a cog in that system that you described, without saying, you can climb to the top, you can be a hero, you can still do things that are noble, even if you're not, protecting your community from Indians, you can protect them from criminals. But now the law has made that largely impossible in many cases as well, I think.
Well, most of the institutions that young men interact with are run by women. If we look at the education system, it is a more feminine view, and the way that little girls learn and little boys learn, it's not the same, and it's not that one's better than the other. But I feel like that, in addition to the fact that social workers, for example, overwhelmingly females, psychologists, psychiatrists, overwhelmingly females. There are so many women who I think have the best intention when it comes to shaping men's lives, but I think they're not realizing that men and women are different. So that masculine leadership that you were talking about, that's largely missing, and it's been replaced with either nothing or maybe too much of a feminizing influence.
What do you think?
I don't think men and women are that different. I do agree with one thing that was said, though. I think one of the big issues you run into is there's literally no good advice out there for how to, help men, because it seems like on the left, they just don't want to talk to men at all. They're just exclusively talking.
I disagree. And I knew this was going to come. So this guy says, Destiny, I think his name was, he says there's no real difference between men and women. I beg to differ, right? Because like even with my masculinity example, if I told a woman, here are the traits of masculinity, I need you to do all these attributes in your day-to-day life. And then I go to a man and I tell him, hey man, do these feminine traits all throughout your life. And let's say their natural temperament is not catered to femininity. it's gonna be hard for them to do that, and most women aren't. Their temperament isn't natural inclined for masculine traits. So, like we saw in the Harvard Business Review article that I just read when I was giving my monologue, women will feel exhausted doing those things because those are things that are not natural to them on average, right? On average, the most disagreeable people are mostly men, and the most agreeable people are mostly women, right? And I think that's a big difference, and that's not even taking into account the physical, right? And I don't know, and this is why I have a problem with liberalism. Liberalism seems to only be good at critiquing things. They're not really good at like giving up for, oh, this is why this is a better solution, right? Their whole thing is, hey, I need to be against status quo. That's it, right? Men or women are completely different. Yes, I agree, Jonathan Fields, they are, right? But this is the liberal idea of how things ought to be instead of accepting for what things are, right? And this is a rationalism point that I'm making, and this might be a topic for another video, but I believe liberalism is structured in rationalism. If you don't know what rationalism is, Google it. Rationalism is this idea that you with unaided reasoning, you can make conclusions that are right about reality, right? And I think conservatives, we focus on things based on constructive reasoning, where our reasoning is held or constrained based on an ideology, like your faith, like your reasons guided by faith, or empirical evidence, right? Which is imperialism. Sorry, it's empiricalism. Sorry, it's like when you're an imperialist. I forgot how to say the word imperialism, right? So conservatives, a lot of conservative reasoning or conservative political thought are based on imperialism. Hey, what is my reasoning based on, right? And it can't be something like subjective. It has to be based on something objective. Right. This is why when conservatives say something based in reality, we go based. That's why. What a liberal is like, oh, due to my own deductive reasoning, I was able to come up with the solution, and this is why it's true. And I think this is where a lot of Destiny's reasoning comes from, is this rationalism type of, hey, how things ought to be, and this is how society ought to be. And conservatives think about, hey, this is how society should be, and here's why. Right? We worry about what is, while they worry about what it should be. And I think this is why I think liberalism ties itself heavily to idealism, and conservatism relies a lot on realism, because like usually we try to base our reasoning on some type of evidence. I hope that makes sense. But let's get back into it, because I want to hear what he has to say.
Talking to women or maybe minority men. And then for people on the right, it's this very strange caricature of masculinity. It's funny because you pointed out like that the red pill talks about a caricature of masculinity, but I feel like sometimes conservatives talk about caricatures of masculinity too. I feel like when we talk about masculinity, everybody wants to talk about like the really sexy, like fighting the kid at lunch that broke your Legos, or
and this go back to what I led into the video with. It shows assertiveness, being bold, being confident, being self-reliant. Hey, I can deal with my problems. I don't need to go to tell the teachers, oh my God, this guy's bothering me. No, I can handle it. Right? And then his other thing about conservatives, like kind of mischaracterize, or like, oh, pretty much trying to say conservatives are just as bad as the real pill guys about saying what masculinity should be about. And all we're saying is, hey, and this is here is an example of constructive reasoning, right? There's a saying that goes, weak men create hard times create strong men, and strong men create good times. And conservatives said, okay, that makes sense. So let's make sure our men stay strong. This is the characterization that the Destiny guy here is trying to say conservatives are doing, but it has a rationale to it. Hey, we want good times, and we want the good times to keep on coming. So we got to make sure that men are prepared for hard times, because only strong men can get us out of hard times, not weak men. And this is the argument conservatives have, is like, hey, it's better to be strong and not need it than to be weak and need it. Get me? What was this? Here's another quote. I'm a quote machine today. It's better to be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war. And this is kind of the conservative, like, yo, stay ready, be prepared. Oh, it's not likely to happen, but what if it did happen? What if you got robbed? And look, and I'm being honest. Look, I grew up in the hood, drive-by shootings. My brother got robbed. Like, yo, I'm used to, like, I understand, like, hey, like, my sense of safety and my bubble can be burst at any moment. Someone can break into your house. Anything can happen. So I understand, hey, like, oh, society's relatively safe, but we still need laws against murder, don't we, Destiny? And this is why I don't get with these liberals. When conservatives make a point about the rule, liberals will make a point about the exception. Now they're going to be, now we want to argue the rule, and now this is the exception. When crime happens periodically in our country, people die of murder. People get killed all the time. So to pretend that we have no threat of physical violence in our society, I think it's not recognizing reality, in my view, anyway. But hey, let's continue with the video.
Fighting with your parents, whatever. The reality is, and I say the same shit to red pillars who say, well, it's important for you to be masculine because somebody breaks into my house, I need to get my assault rifle and tell my woman to hide my, like, life, 99% of life is not these moments. Like, how successful you are in life really comes down to, like, can you maintain a sleep schedule? Can you have a decent diet? Do you have enough discipline to go to work, show up to your job? Can you graduate school? Like, these are, not only are these like the most important, they're oftentimes the hardest ones. It's a lot harder to maintain a 4.0 GPA, get a scholarship, go to school, than it is to stand up to a bully one time on the playground. But it seems like those are the sexy, like, moments that everybody wants to obsess over.
And I think masculinity also has a base point in discipline. Right? Discipline is a big part of masculinity, in my view, right? If you don't have sexual discipline, you put yourself in a lot of trouble. If you don't have personal discipline, like, you know, not staying out of drugs, not indulging in hedonism, right? Because in my view, there's two types of masculinity. There's the virtuous masculinity, and then there's the hedonistic masculinity. And I believe the hedonistic masculinity is a lot what Destiny's doing, because he's in an open relationship, I believe. And the red pill guys, they're part of that hedonistic style. Like, hey, pleasure. I seek pleasure. I avoid pain. And everything I do in society is to maximize pleasure. While virtue is more of, hey, I'm seeking an ideal. And I want to live up to an ideal. Even if I fall short of the ideal, is the fact that I constantly strive for it is what makes my life meaningful. And this is the kind of things Jordan Peterson preaches about a lot. Clean your room. Take responsibility for your life. How can you change the world when you have your own life in chaotic, in shambles? How are you going to tell how the world should be when your life is in shambles? It pretty much is the point, right? This is the virtuous men I'm talking about. Like, hey, you're trying to make society, your country, your family a better place, right? Instead of just doing things for your own selfish gain. And I think this is what a lot of atheists have, this self-centered worldview. And in my view, the worst people in history were atheists. Hitler, Joseph Stalin, right? If you were to count the depth that atheism have, oh my God, like, yo, I don't understand why people still label themselves as atheists. This is why I'd rather be stoic, like a stoicist. I'd rather stoicism than atheism, because atheism has no moral framework. The only moral framework that atheists have is don't believe in God. That's it. Don't believe in a higher power. That's all that matters. So someone like that will only respect one thing: what? Consequences. So if there's no consequences to something they're doing, they'll do it. If there's no consequences of committing murder, an atheist will commit murder, right? And this is kind of the idea of the dynamic I'm talking about when it comes to masculinity, is that it's not bad or wrong or I don't know. All I'm saying is masculinity is amoral, apolitical. And it's just like, hey, these are the traits. And should men have more of these in society or not? That's it. I think that's where the masculinity debate is. But it seems like it always seems to show that, hey, men don't need to be masculine in this society to be successful. When I just finished in the Harvard Business Review showing that how the workplace have to demasculinize certain things because masculine traits are seen to have a unfair advantage in the workplace. I mean, this is according to Harvard Business Review, right? For gender equity, they have to demasculinize masculine defaults. Promoting yourself is a masculine default. But we're here saying that masculinity is not needed. Like, I don't understand. Maybe he's trying to make the point that it shouldn't be gender specific, but men, it's easier for men to display these traits than women. That's all the point I'm trying to make.
And then in the meantime, when you look at like the woman's side of things, women have been taught to have more control over reproductive health. They're taught to go to school and succeed in ways that we never thought they could before. They're taught to enter the job market and get jobs and make money in ways they never thought they could before. women have been doing a good job at kind of like leveling up all these different aspects of their lives. Nobody wants to talk to the men on the left, and the people that are talking to the men from the right are like, well, you guys just need to be even more masculine, even though I don't see any future where just being even more masculine is equipping you to succeed in a world where your outcomes are largely determined by like how successful you could be at a white collar office job, or how successful you could be sitting down, 8 hours a day in a school setting, like in college.
I suppose that's true. I don't know if, while it does seem sort of silly when you lay it out that way to focus on, these heroic standards as opposed to what is more practically applicable, it is true, though, that like even when men do go down those paths and they do them successfully, they don't feel fulfilled. They don't feel happy. They feel very, inundated and restless. And I think that's partially why the male suicide rate is like unprecedentedly high, because yes, they are checking these boxes and they're living successfully as determined by how society might want that to be defined, but they still do not feel like they're living as men. I mean, even, for example, if there were a guy who were making good money at a job, white collar, and he steps outside his office to go get into his Mercedes and he gets like robbed by somebody who doesn't have a gun, they just like beat the shit out of him. Wait, can I swear? I don't remember the rules here.
I don't know if we have any. I don't know.
He's going to feel like emasculated. You're going to feel bad about yourself because you were unable to defend yourself. And
Yeah, because it goes against the, like what I pointed out earlier, the self-reliance. Like, oh, I can't defend myself. I can't do anything for myself. And I think that's the kind of hopelessness men can fall into if they feel like, hey, if they feel hopeless, like they fall into nihilism. And this is kind of one of the reasons why I think people need to believe in something higher than themselves. And this is where religion, I can make a case that, hey, a religious society was a better society, is because even if you look at the stats, non-religious people are less happy than religious people, right? And I think it's because non-religious people, when they go through hard times, when they go through adversity, they're more likely to fall into nihilism than religious people, because religious people can find meaning in their struggle, meaning in their obstacles, and say, hey, like, it doesn't make sense now, but I bet you 5 years from now, when I get past this storm, it's going to make sense in the future, right? And that's how I think too. A lot of bad things that I saw at the time was like, oh my God, this is like the worst thing ever to happen to me. Now looking back, I say, hell, those bad situations helped me in more ways than one. Because there's another saying I like to say, nothing makes sense when you're struggling in the moment, but when you look back on it, you can be able to find the meaning in it. Oh, this helped me, because if it wasn't because of this situation, I would have learned how to stand up for myself. I wouldn't have learned to be assertive. I wouldn't have learned to be confident in myself. I wouldn't have learned to need hey, just because no one believed in me, all I need is me to believe in me, right? Because at the end of the day, if you don't believe in yourself, who's gonna believe in you, right? And this is the kind of thing that like negative experience can make you or break you. It's not necessarily what happens to you; it's how you respond to what happens to you. You can turn it into a good thing, or you could let it fester and become a bad thing. And I think this is one part of masculinity that our society shuns a lot. Like, our society is quick to push the victim mindset, right? Right. And this is something I did a video with Vivek on, is that everyone's going to go through hardship, right? And masculinity is about learning how to deal with hardship and using the hardship to drive you towards a particular, a better end, right? Because in a day, these particular thing, you as a man, and this is me being like talking as a father, how I think about things is, how can I not make things worse, right? And I think that's a very masculine trait to have, to look at something, calculate it, and separate your feelings from it. Because one part about being a man or being like masculine is to do something despite how you feel. Right now in this stream, I'm being honest with you guys. I feel tired. I feel sick. I have a headache, but I knew, hey, look, I promised my audience I'll be here at 6 p.m. My butt better be here at 6 p.m., right? I do things despite how I feel. And that's a big part of masculinity, right? Imagine if the World War II soldiers were more feminine, right? Imagine Gen Z men had to fight World War II. Oh, we would have lost the war. Oh, I feel scared. I don't want to storm the shores of Normandy. Oh, we would have lost the war. Hitler would have took over the entire world, bro. We would have lost. I'm being serious. This is why masculinity is important in our society. And when you have liberals like Destiny saying, oh, it's not needed in society anymore. Oh, okay. When ish hit the fan, you'll be looking for toxic masculine men. And that's a fact, because strong men, creates good times. So I don't understand. I appreciate that, Jonathan Fields. I got it from It's a lot of books. I forgot what books. Maybe I'll recommend some books that I think will make people more masculine. I think I have some books. Let me see. What books can I say? There's 2 books I'll recommend here. Let me play the video and then I'll bring back the books. Let's play the video because I'm been rambling too much.
Especially if his girlfriend or if his wife sees that. I don't care how much feminist literature she has read. If your woman ever sees you get beat up by another guy, she's never going to look at you the same way. I don't care how understanding she says that she is. Oh, he was bigger than you, whatever. She will never look at you the same way again, because whether or not we like it, they have been wired biologically to seek out men who can protect them. Even if now they don't necessarily need the financial stability that maybe they would have required, 100 years ago, they still have that instinct to pursue that. And so I think that those moments too, I mean, how many guys too are now living in the glory day, or living in like this very comfortable lifestyle, who still reminisce back to when they were like the captain of the football team, or back, in their glory days, or even like post-traumatic stress disorder. I mean, properly understood, we learned this in Vietnam. It's not like guys are so traumatized by war. It's that they go and they experience that brotherhood and that glory, and they come back and they're like in a box. I mean, the Hurt Locker actually explored this very well. You read the interviews from like after Vietnam, these soldiers are coming back. It's not just that they're traumatized, it's that life after war is boring. So I think there is something in the male brain that's wired to pursue that.
I think a driving part about men's psychology, and maybe this is just my opinion, right? And it's been a long time since I've been able to give my opinion without having to be so factually correct. Oh my God, it's so freeing sometimes. Is that the ideal is that men like adventure. Men don't like mundane, predictable. And I think this is one of the reasons I started this channel too, is because I wanted something more than just my corporate job. Yes, my corporate job pays me great money where I can make my wife a stay-at-home wife, right? My wife can stay home full time. I work from home. Great like lifestyle. But it's always like, I guess this is a part of masculinity too, is this drive for more, almost, right? It's this ambition. And I think that's one thing women like about masculine men too, because masculine men tend to be very ambitious, very go-getter like, right? And that comes with its positives and its negatives. Some of the negatives is my butt can't sit still. I have to be doing something. Ask my wife. She always complaining about me. But I think some of the ideals that I get is from Bruce Lee. It's a political, Kenny, you're a political commentator, but you say you listen to Bruce Lee? Yes, right? Because here's a quote in the back of Bruce Lee's book. A teacher is never a giver of truth. He is a guide, a pointer to the truth that each student must find for himself. A good teacher is merely a catalyst. And that's what I'm trying to be. I'm just trying to be a catalyst. Like, okay, Kenny set me off this journey where he questioned my assumptions about black people, right? Racism isn't the biggest issue in Black America. He challenges that assumption that I had about what's going on in Black America. Let me look through the truth. Okay, this is what Kenny points to as evidence for his conclusions. Let me check it out. Let me see if it helps me with my conclusion. Let me see if I can debunk this, right? And I think this is like a lot of things about masculinity is about persevering, coming back from setbacks, obstacles in your life, right? And it's funny how it's masculinity is about achievement, right? Like some of the stuff, like I read a lot of like philosophical stuff, and I think I used to be a big martial arts nerd. Now the stream is becoming about me, but we're talking about masculinity here, and I think I'm a masculine guy. I don't know, maybe just me, being confirmation biased, but I think a lot of things that influenced my thinking was martial arts, Bruce Lee. Like I'm a 90s kid, okay? I grew up on, if you don't know these movies, I'm sorry I alienated my audience, but if you didn't, I watched Three Ninjas, all the Three Ninjas, Karate Kid, Bruce Lee's Way of the Dragon, Fist of Fury. My mom used to be big Bruce Lee fans, right? And I got Jocko Willick's Discipline is Freedom. Wait, was it this? No, yeah, Discipline equals Freedom. Bruh, when I like so short and concise, like I like these picture books, right? The clock is ticking and Father Time is cruel and unsparing. Time offers no forgiveness. It grants pardon to no one. It has no mercy. Time is ruthless. So what should you do? Get ruthless right back. Have no mercy on your time. Don't allow it any slack. Don't let any slip by. Grab time by the throat and get what you want out of it. Masculinities, assertiveness. This is what it's preaching. Assertiveness, self-reliance. Hey, time waits for no one. These are masculine ideals. And I think making men more feminine is doing a disservice to our society. And I think if you're thinking about it from an establishment point of view, establishment politics, the establishment don't want confident, self-reliant, assertive men in society, because if there's a lot of self-reliant, confident, assertive men, these men can spark a rebellion. Like, I'm being honest with you. If you want to stay in power, if you want to have control over society, you can't have more men that are masculine. And this is why I think masculine is being demonized so much in our popular mainstream culture, and why men like Dylan Mulvaney are praised, worshipped, get thrown millions and millions of dollars for portraying themselves as feminine, or Harry Styles on a cover of a magazine wearing a skirt. Because yeah, if we have more men like Harry Styles, we can more easily control society. And when you look at it from an establishment politics point, only me, I can bring masculinity about politics again. But hey, I digress. Let's get back into the video.
Few things. So one, that PTSD is absolutely not. I was with my brothers and then I came back. I don't think that is a driving factor of PTSD. I think a driving factor of PTSD is the human central nervous system being stressed beyond whatever a human is meant to deal with in life and death situations for sometimes extended periods of time, sometimes with other physiological things lacking too, like sleep, diet, whatever. But regardless of that, again, we hit on there's another red pill talking point. Like, what is a woman looking for in a man? Protection. Like, where do you live? Is this like in Pakistan, or are we like in some civil war place? Like, we live in the United States of America. I don't think protection is the thing that, like, most people.
And another thing I noticed what liberals do too is they like to minimize concerns that people have. Like, he tried to act like, oh, this stuff never happens. Like, yeah, crime never happens in America, right? Especially if you live in a blue state. Yeah, crime never happens. It's not like you're gonna get pushed off a train and get hit. Oh, you can. Oh, it's not like someone's gonna mug you. Oh, wait, it can happen. Right. And it's almost a way of like minimizing. Oh, like, masculinity is not really needed. We could all be feminine men. Right. And just call the police. Yeah, we're going to have to wait like 5 minutes on average before help actually comes. But as we're waiting, we'll be at the mercy of the criminal robbing us. But hey, no masculinity. Like, and this is a problem I have with like liberals in general. Is that instead of saying, yeah, I understand, but this is not likely to happen. Right. I wish one of the conservatives was like, oh, crime don't happen in America. Oh, crime does happen in America. Oh, then you'll see why a woman would want to have protection. Right. Because at the end of the day, no matter how much police we have in our society, the average wait time with a policeman is 5 minutes. So 5 minutes, you stuck. So if I told my wife, not my wife, sorry. If I told a woman, hey, you got to wait for the police for 5 minutes. Who would you rather have with you for those 5 minutes while you're waiting for a police? A masculine man or a feminine man? Now, I can't answer this question, but I'm assuming it'll be a more masculine man. I'm just saying. There's a reason why strong men create good times. And when we're in good times, like we are now, but I think America's falling from good times and we're starting to head into hard times. The weak men are like saying, hey, we don't need strong men, right? We're in the garden. We don't need no soldiers. But then when it's time for war, all the men became gardeners and now we're screwed. Now we're going to get taken over by China. I don't know. I mean, when a rising power like China is pushing masculinity on their men and demonizing feminist like propaganda and all this stuff, and we're doing the opposite, that should be a sign for liberals to be like, oh, maybe we should be empowering men to still be masculine. Right? And I just a thought. That's just a thought. Right? Because if China's supposed to be our biggest threat, our biggest competition, why aren't we taking notice of, China is pushing pro-masculine messaging in our society? Why are they doing that? Maybe it has to do with the saying, right? And those who don't learn from history fails to they're doomed to repeat it. There's a reason why that cycle exists. But hey, I digress. Let's get back into the video.
People probably want a guy that earns a decent paycheck.
But is that not financial protection?
Yeah, but that's not the protection that he was talking about, right? If you want to broaden protection to be so overly broad and meaningless that it includes things like making money, you can do that. But when people say protection, I mean, he was talking about like if your wife sees you get beaten up, blah, blah, blah. Like, true. If we take the totality of divorces and relationships ending in the United States right now, is like, saw my husband get beat up. Is that even going to make the top 50? I'm guessing it's probably nowhere near on that list.
It's a similar impulse in the brain, though, because I think women are initiating something between like 2/3 and 80% of divorces, and largely they just cite that they feel unfulfilled. I think that can manifest in a variety of ways, but I think it's like they're looking at their husbands as less attractive for whatever reason.
Well,
you can even see studies too. Women that earn more than their husbands in a long enough timeline are more likely to divorce them because they don't have that traditional perceived ability to, like she mentioned, protect financially. But I agree with what
wait,
you're
real
saying.
quick, hold on. Neither of those two things are completely true. Number one, the divorce rate gets cited a lot. There's a reason why women overwhelmingly initiate divorce versus men. And that's because oftentimes women have more they need to secure by doing so. If a man and a wife get together and things, petter out, whatever, things don't work out, especially if the woman is a child, that woman has to file for divorce if she wants to qualify for benefits, if she wants to get any kind of child support, if she wants to get any kind of welfare.
Sounds like financial reasons. So what's the point? Because red pillars, I don't watch their space often. I know the reason why I watch red pill content is I have 2 sons, and I want to make sure that when I have that talk in my son's 2 years old, in 14 years when my sons start dating, I want to be able to give him current information that's actually applicable in his time, right? So that's the only reason I follow this red pill stuff. But my problem, my thing is that not financial? Like, hey, you're incentivized to divorce for financial reasons. Is that not financial? Like last time I checked, that's financial, isn't it? So what is his argument initially? Is it the idea that, a woman doesn't divorce her man because he's not making enough money? If that's the case, then sure. But I think that still falls under financial reasons. No, I'm just thinking in my head. I don't know. Let's go.
Otherwise, her husband's income is constantly going to be taken into account when she's trying to apply for any assistance or need. So
Okay, it sounds like financial to me. I don't know what point he's disagreeing with.
Men are oftentimes highly incentivized to get divorced because a man can be married and not give a fuck forever. Socially, there's probably less stigma, I'm separated from my wife, she's whatever, versus a woman being like, well, I'm still married, but I don't see my husband. So socially, there's a lot of stigma behind who would cause a divorce. And then for financial benefits, a woman with a child whose husband is no longer in the picture and helping, she absolutely needs to file for that divorce in order to qualify for anything she might need to maintain a household. Number one. Number two, after the divorce thing, you brought up what was the second thing?
Oh, shoot. I don't even remember.
I don't remember, bro.
Was it the protection thing? I lost
Probably.
it. But the number one thing was,
Well, so I just quick Google search, singular source, Forbes advisor says that lack of commitment is the primary reason for divorce. 75% of individuals cited lack of commitment. 60% cited infidelity. So
sounds about right. And I'm not going to make any controversial points here. I think that's relatively true for most marriages that end in divorce. A lack of commitment is hard to quantify. What did they mean by lack of commitment? Where was it hey, we were a Christian couple and then my husband doesn't want to take care of the family and we kind of grew apart? I think that's where the lack of commitment stuff comes from. But the 60% divorced couples cited infidelity as a reason. Unfaithfulness, when a marriage is supposed to be monogamous or one party fails to fulfill their obligation, trust can be lost and the marriage may be irreparably broken. Okay, I might actually do have a controversial take actually on the infidelity point, because some of the ideas is that when, I think statistically it still shows that men are more likely to have infidelity in a marriage than women. If I remember correctly, I could be wrong. I might have outdated information because now I'm hearing stats that women cheat more than men now in our modern culture. Debauchery. But hey, I digress. A lot of times no one wants to talk about the sexless marriage thing. And I think this is one thing, one point. And I try to steal, when I talk about people who I ideologically disagree with, I try my best to steel man their arguments. I try to attack their best argument. And Red Pill will put out this argument, and I believe this is somewhat true, is that sexless marriage drives a lot of male infidelity. And I agree with that. If you have a sexless marriage and your men's sexual needs are not met, don't be surprised. In the day, the Bible talks about how the man is a servant to the wife and the wife is a servant unto the husband. So is this equal, hey, we supposed to help each other not fall into temptation. That's the point of marriage, right? You satisfy my needs so I don't fall into temptations, and I satisfy your needs so you don't fall into temptation. And when you have a sexist relationship, and I think maybe that's where the lack of commitment might have been the infidelity. Maybe someone say, hey, you haven't had sex with me in 3 months. I don't think this is going anywhere, and I don't want to cheat. I don't have any infidelity, so let's end the relationship. We grew apart, right? That's where I think a lot of the stuff happens. But then when it does happen, hey, I'm unfaithful. What drove that unfaithfulness? Because at the end of the day, I see it as a 50-50 street. if my wife steps out on me, I'll see it as, okay, I played some part in why she committed infidelity. At least that's how I would see it. Right now, some people think, oh, Kenny, you're crazy. I wouldn't have thought of that way. But this is part of what I'm talking about as a Stoic. Like, this is a good book. I think I'll recommend this for any man. The Obstacle is the Way, the timeless art of turning trials into triumphs, right? And a book beside, like, this is a great book. And I probably this was going to be what I'll recommend as my books for the masculinity stream. But I always like to see, hey, as a man, I believe in extreme ownership. And I believe that, hey, it may not be 100% my fault, but I played some part of this negative situation happening to me. And this is a big part of masculinity. Ownership, control, assertiveness, self-reliance, individualism. I don't know. I don't care how you want to categorize this, but I think this is a big part about masculinity. Hey, why my wife doesn't want to have sex with me? Oh, what's going on in a relationship? Oh, something's wrong, right? Working through those issues, right? And I don't know. I want to call it abusive, but there's stats show that women are more likely to do something called emotional abuse, right? And one part of emotional abuse is to withhold affection. So I ain't saying all that. Like, oh, if you have a sexist marriage, your wife is trying to emotionally abuse you. But I'm just saying domestic abuse is 24% of cases of divorce, and a lot of domestic abuse is mutual, right? That's all I'm trying to say. And if you look at gay marriage versus lesbian marriage has way more domestic violence abuse than gay marriage. I'm just saying. So, but this idea, there's this narrative that is men are the main perpetrator of domestic violence, when domestic violence is a usual mutual thing, right? I don't know, honestly. When you talk about like abstract things like masculinity, it's really hard to really come to a solution about how society should treat masculinity, right? And I think this is why I'm a conservative, because I believe in freedom with constraints, right? There's moderation, but in all things, right? In some things, not at all, right? Okay, we can make masculine men, but channel it in a positive direction, right? That's the constraint part, right? I don't think it's smart to have a bunch of men out here having 50 bodies on him. I don't think that's a smart idea, because at the end of the day, maybe this is me because I grew up in the hood, which is like, black men, we have this image, this reputation of being not the most sexually disciplined men in America, right? There's a man in America that has like 33 kids, black man, obviously, right? So I see that, like, if you don't have sexual discipline, I see it as a negative, right? And some of the messaging that the red pill preaches, I'm kind of against that, because I believe it creates more harm in society than good, right? Because I believe in moderation, right? So if you have it's a confusing part for me, right? And this is why I say I don't like arbitrary standards like, oh, men do this. No, I think I attribute more manhood with attributes than with action, if that makes sense. Hopefully it does. Let's get back into the video.
It seems like infidelity is the real reason for divorce, which kind of sounds like if either individual in the relationship is cheating on each other, they've already broken their relationship.
I mean, this is something I'll push back at the 80% of women filing for divorce. I think there's a difference between a woman filing for divorce and a woman being responsible for the divorce. If it's a case of infidelity specifically, a man can cheat and a woman can file for divorce because of that. But can you really blame the woman for the marriage failing in that case?
I don't think so, but I think lack of commitment here is defined separately from infidelity. Lack of commitment could be like, he's not bringing to the table what I thought he was, something like that. These sort of like vague reasons that are hard to define. Infidelity, I would agree with, but I mean, it does say like 75% would be lack of commitment.
I want to ask that question. What causes infidelity? Could it be desires that a man has or a woman has that they're not being fulfilled with? Or could it be that something in their relationship already broke, where an attraction has waned for a variety of reasons?
I think it's a two-way problem, because everyone knows, and this is not, I'm not saying anything groundbreaking here. Men have a higher sex drive than women, right? And if women, you don't believe me, I forgot what it was. Some woman, she did, I think her name was, I forgot her name. It was some woman dating coach, and she said she took testosterone, and she felt so, I don't know if I could say horny, but I'll say that as a word. She felt so horny that when she saw her husband, she said she couldn't wait to jump in bed with him. And she said, damn, I only got a taste of testosterone. And men have, I feel like 5 times, maybe 10 times the testosterone amount than women. And she said, oh, I can't imagine. Now I understand why men are the way they are. Right? Because like the sexual appetite that men have is almost relentless. Like it's craziness. And to me, like this, and one thing, this is what I like about my, like when I say stuff, is that if you don't believe what I'm saying, just test out my theory, right? I have a theory that if a woman wants to say, oh, men just can't keep it in their pants, they're undisciplined, it's easy for you to say woman, because testosterone is the drug that makes men want to have sex, right? And if you want to think, oh, okay, women can just has as much sex as men, one of the arguments I'll say is that if you're married, tell your husband, hey, I want to have sex as often as you want. And you're going to notice your husband wants sex like 3 times a day. You're going to be like, oh my God, 3 times a day? And like, yeah, because that's how often men want. I forgot, there was a stat out there that men think about sex every certain amount of seconds. I forgot. Look, I'm sure you guys can find it, right? I'm sure you guys trust me enough to know that I'm not just making this up off the top of my head. But I think it's a 2-part problem. Like, yeah, men have this innate drive to want sex. If they don't feel sexually fulfilled, it increases the temptation of them stepping out on you, right? So this is why I'm saying, women ain't 100% your fault, but you play some part into letting your husband or your partner fall into temptation, right? Because I like to use this analogy, and my wife don't like me when I use this analogy, but I say, hey, a man's sex drive is like hunger, right? If you feed your husband is less likely to take food from another woman. Now, if you don't want to feed your husband and you're saying, oh, I don't feel like cooking today. And let's say your husband has no capacity to cook. Let's say only women are allowed to cook in the house, right? And you hold the fact that you're the only source of food for this man, and the man is starving, dying of hunger. Would you be surprised that when a woman shows any kind of affection towards him, he's going to be tempted to fall through with that? Would you be surprised about that? No. Women always talk about this all the time. When women commit infidelity towards their husband, oh, he wasn't paying enough attention to me. He wasn't doing this to me. He kept ignoring me. All he kept focusing on was work. You don't think men have the same kind of inclination as well? When their needs are not being met, that they'll have a wandering eye, right? If a man leaves the house full, he ain't gonna look for food from another woman. But if you let your man leave the house hungry, day after day after day, and you don't feed your husband for 3 months, and the hunger I'm using as an analogy for sex, if a woman gives him food and you catch him eating food from another woman, can you really blame him for, oh, you should have been faithful to me? How dare you eat food from another woman? When technically you kind of pushed him into my husband pushed me into the arms of another man. I can make that same argument for what women do to men. And see, with me, I call it like, I try to keep everyone on the same standard. Okay, if you want to make an excuse for why women cheat on men, then shouldn't there be also an explanation for why men cheat on women? Just a thought. I'm all about equality. I'm all about equal opportunity, right? I'm all about, hey, unifying standard where it's applicable, where it's nuanced. And, I digress. I think I'm going to end it off there because I'm not feeling too good right now. I gave you guys an hour. Forgive me. I know I'm ending it kind of short. But I think for masculinity, if I were to recommend a book towards masculinity, and I would say this is a good iteration for masculinity, right? Where is it? Give me a sec to find it. Meditate on your mortality. Prepare to start again. Where's the outline? There was an outline. I'm sorry. Stream's taking too long, I know. Control your emotions. I think Control Your Emotions, the book recommendation for masculinity stream, is the obstacle. The obstacle is the way. That's my book. If you want to, what's Kenny's version of masculinity? It's usually in this book. But I think if I were to attribute masculinity to one thing, is to control your emotions. I think that's a big part about masculinity. Right? You do things despite how you feel about them. I feel tired, don't matter. Job's not finished. I feel sick, Kenny, job's not finished. I feel depressed, Kenny, job's not finished. Sorry. right? Because your feelings don't matter. End of the day, the bill still got to be paid. End of the day, your kids still need you, right? And it's this self-sacrificing heroic, that the template, the hero, he does something even though if it could cost him his life. That's what strong men do. But you think in our feminized, weak society now, you think you can expect a Gen Z man to do that? No. You can't expect that. What's the gamer's name? I forgot his name. XQC or these game streamer guys. Can you see them like rushing in front of a bullet to save their girlfriend? No, you can't imagine that. And that's what masculinity is about. Controlling your emotions. Damn, I'm scared that I can die, but what would I rather have happen? Me live on as a coward or go in and try to save the ones I love, even if it costs me my life, even that's a possible risk. Right? And risk taking is a big part of masculinity. And you see it in our culture today. A lot of men don't want to take risk. A lot of men don't want to give their opinions because what? They can catch flack for it. If you tell a woman, oh, women look, this OnlyFans woman looks slutty. She's a I don't know what to say. I forgot his name already. Keke Palmer, her boyfriend just came out getting criticized by a bunch of women for calling her out. Oh, you look shameful. You're a mother. What are you doing dressed in that? All of society attacked him and he folded. That's not a very masculine thing to do, but that's part of masculinity, risk taking. Because if you don't take risk, nothing will change. And that goes for life in general. But hey, I digress, guys. I hope you guys found the stream entertaining, insightful. I think it was a good conversation. The culture war, debating on masculinity. They get into more deeper topics than I was able to go into. I really don't feel well, guys. I'm sorry. I would go another 30 minutes, but I really don't feel good today. But I pushed through. I tried. I gave you guys at least an hour and 6 minutes. I hope you guys have a blessed weekend. I hope you guys have fun. I hope you guys stay safe. And I promise I'll be back. Hopefully I'll be back at 100% next Friday. So I'll catch you guys on the next stream. All right. Don't forget to like the stream on your way out. I really do appreciate you guys for watching. And I'll catch you guys on the next stream next week. I'll catch you guys next week. All right. Thanks. Peace.